I was reflecting on last night, which was not so silent, right? So sometimes it's not often these days that we get in touch with the forces of nature, right? And so we feel sort of maybe sometimes disconnected from these forces of nature. But as we contemplate on the story of the Nativity, of those little soon-to-be family of Joseph, Mary, and the donkey, very important family member, making it down from the north of the Holy Land, right, down to Bethlehem. We can imagine that maybe not all of those nights on the journey were so silent, or even the time in the manger, right? When in this last moments when Mary was about to give birth, was probably not a silent night, as we sing about it today. And so in life, and as we reflect on this Christmas story, I think we're often confronted with this tension between the divine, the cosmic, the holy, the glory of God. And sometimes in this life we do forget how glorious God is, and that we actually need to make active effort to invite God's glory into our life, to invite His majesty and His presence in our life, right? But then life is not only glory, right? But life is also often very profane, very basic, simple things that we have to do day in and day out. And so last night, also reflecting on the storm, getting a few cancellations from our musicians that they can't imagine driving down and things like that. I was reflecting on this tension that we are facing, right? The glory of God and the little things that happen each and every day, and that sometimes are in danger of kind of deterring us, throwing us off the main point. And I think the Christmas story is a very profound and deep story that exactly shows that, right? When Mary had the angel appear to her and tell her that she will conceive the Son of God, Emmanuel, meaning God is with us, she might have had all sorts of glorious feelings, right? Glorious senses of, wow, God has chosen me. God will work through me. And she probably did not imagine, highly pregnant, traveling on a donkey across the Holy Land, having to shout at her husband because he doesn't get what's going on. That's of course not in the Bible. It's just me trying to imagine it based on real life experience somehow. So yeah, and in this situation, I would like to point out 3 lines in the reading that Uncle Richard read to us. And one of them is, in the midst of all this situation, it reads, "But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart." In other translations it says, "And she meditated upon these things." In the midst, maybe you can imagine. I think we can't imagine giving birth in a stable these days. Really like an animal, right? Think of it. Jesus was born like an animal in that sort of circumstances. And it sometimes doesn't hit us that deeply, that profoundly. And what really God is also telling us through this story, I had the chance being myself with a group of young people in Bethlehem, and we happened to visit the stable in Bethlehem. And then it sort of hit, oh, that's not a place to give birth. And even my Catholic friends, who are, Catholicism is sort of extra special in sugarcoating the Christmas story, and we have many layers of sugarcoat on that Christmas story that we sometimes don't taste the rawness of it. But in this rawness, there is a depth of heart, and it tells us something about the glory of God and how it is connected and how it is related to our life. That in the midst of the struggles and imperfections, and maybe Joseph could have planned a bit better, right? Maybe Joseph could have prepared a bit better, not to make that journey last minute, when Mary was already very pregnant. And often we could have prepared better, right? And things like this. We're confronted with these situations, but still God works. Still God puts the plan He's put in motion, and He moves through with it. And so it's, I think, also often in our life when we have, Joseph probably had regrets of not, when he was on the journey, he probably had the regret, right? I should have come earlier. Or I should have made better preparations. But at that point, and I think many fathers can relate to that. I can certainly relate to that. Oh, I should have prepared a bit better. It's a bit of the story of my life. I feel very connected to Joseph this morning. And so in that sense, but to nevertheless move through, to nevertheless move forward and trust that God's plan that He has already set in motion will come through me. And not forget these moments when the angel visits you and gives you a glimpse of that glory, of that Emmanuel, God is with us. So this is one part of the story, and I cannot help but really have tears in my eyes when I read this one line. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. So there is, of course, in the Christmas story, right, this glorious proclamation of glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards man. And as already indicated a bit earlier, in the midst of the profanities, of the daily challenges, we sometimes do forget this glory of God. And that but because we start to look at things externally, right? We start to look at things superficially and think then, of course, there in the manger, that's not glorious. But that's one thing that I learned is that God can only really be with us when we give Him that glory, when we give Him that exaltation, when we give Him that space to say, "You're awesome. I want you. I want you to be here and present in my life. No matter what else is going on in my life right now." And kind of the worst thing you can think of as I think as a woman is giving birth in a stable, right? And of course there would have been, and our true parents shared about this, there would have been much better ways to prepare for it. And our true parents explained this to us. But still, in that moment, God's glory is not limited. God's glory can still come down. There can still be, even if a tree is sick, right? Even if a tree is struggling, there can still be, maybe you have seen this, sometimes a tree really struggling, right, to survive, but there's still a perfect fruit on that, struggling tree. So if we give God the glory, that he deserves, that he needs, it's really an invitation, an open heart, then no matter what our life circumstances, life situations, and the biggest glory, the only Son of God as it is in the Christmas story, can come into our life and can be born, and we can bear the perfect fruit. Even, with several branches chopped off, right? It only needs one healthy branch, ultimately, to bear actually a good fruit and a good tree. So, as we ponder on this Christmas story, and as we now then start to celebrate and enjoy our company together, I want to invite you to do exactly that thing, right? We do not need to be delusional in the sense of saying, oh, everything is fine, that's the best possible world we could live in, that's the best possible situation I could have done, I was meant to make this and this mistake in the past. We don't need to be delusional or sort of in denial, is maybe the right word, in denial to embrace the glory of God. We can be totally realistic, totally grounded in all the things that are not so going well, and all those things that should have gone better, in all those things that maybe mistakes I've made in the past. It's all fine. We can accept all those things and at the same time give full praise, full authority, and full joy also to God, and enjoy that relationship with God in our deepest and most profound depth. So the profane in that sense and the sacred, they do not need to be enemies in our lives. But actually, when we bring those two things, the sacred, the holy, the thing that is lifted up, that is in heaven, and the profane, the earthy things, the earthy duties, the challenges. We had guests coming over and staying with us last night, and I tried to put together, I actually succeeded in putting together a bunk bed for our new guests, for our guests. But I think God really played some jokes on me yesterday to prepare for this message, because I was going well, I was following the instructions, and then as soon as I thought, now I've got it figured out, I know how to do it, I put the instructions to the side and started screwing together by myself. And then, exactly in that moment happened. That hole for the ladder was on the other side and here, and had to unscrew everything again, and that happened 2 or 3 times. And I probably can't imagine God cracking up and saying, oh yeah, you don't need instructions, right? Oh, you want to talk about the holy and the profane tomorrow? I'll give you something very practical, very profane for you to deal with. Will you stay calm? And I kind of did. So the point really is, I think in the Christmas story really reveals not ideal circumstances, right? And not ideal situation and environment. But nevertheless, and especially because of that, even in such a situation, even in unideal circumstances, we can choose ideal love. We can choose the presence and the glory of God to come down. And of course, the Christmas story was only the beginning of the life of Jesus, and it probably takes a whole life to reflect on it, to contemplate it more deeply. But this point is I think relevant for us today as it is tomorrow, and it was for the previous generation. That yeah. But if we invite the light, that's actually the title of the sermon today, invite the light. If we invite the light, it will be with us. And it will not leave unless we disinvite it. And so, just the challenge is not to disinvite it, right? The challenge of Mary was not to freak out, but to, as it says here, to keep all these things and ponder them in your heart. And so, yeah, I would like us now to take, we'll have a wild party today, don't worry about that. But I would like, because it is joyous that God is with us. And it can be loud for that as well. But I would like us now to invite us into a moment of silence. Maybe, not quite silence, we can play some music. Uncle David Rennie, maybe you can play some meditative music in the background.